Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time we're looking at a Reddit thread, and it's a really interesting one. The prompt was, what messed you up?
Oh, wow.
And so we're going to kind of dig through all the responses and see what we can find, what patterns emerge, and, maybe learn a little bit about the human experience.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really fascinating to get this kind of raw glimpse into other people's
For
lives.
sure.
These are the things that people are carrying with them, the experiences that have really shaped who they are, and I'm sure we're going to find some common threads.
Absolutely. And one of the biggest ones that jumped out at me right away was loneliness and isolation. It's like a recurring theme throughout so many of these responses.
It makes sense when you think about how important connection is for us as human beings. We're social creatures by nature, and when we don't have those bonds, it can really impact us deeply.
Yeah, there was one commenter who talked about feeling too aware because they spent so much time alone as a kid.
Oh, wow.
They were constantly overthinking and analyzing everything, almost like their brain had kind of adapted to being alone.
That's interesting. It's like in the absence of external input, the brain turns inward, becoming hypervigilant.
Right. And I think that could be a double-edged sword. It can make you really introspective, but it can also lead to anxiety and overthinking.
Absolutely. There's a fine line there. And for some people, that isolation during those crucial developmental years can have a lasting impact.
Yeah, there was another commenter who said their childhood loneliness left them completely unprepared for adult relationships.
It's like they missed out on learning those essential social skills that most of us pick up along the way.
Right. And those skills are so important, not just for romantic relationships, but for friendships work, even just feeling comfortable in social situations.
And the research really backs this up. Loneliness has been linked to depression, anxiety, even physical health problems. It's not something to be taken lightly.
No, it's not. And speaking of serious issues, another major theme that emerged was loss and trauma. There were so many stories of people losing loved ones, homes, parts of themselves to accidents, illness, violence. It was really heavy stuff.
It's heartbreaking to read about these experiences, but it's also important to acknowledge the impact of trauma. It can really shape us in profound ways.
Yeah, one story that really stuck with me was the man who witnessed his partner's death in a car accident. He talked about being haunted by the sound of her dying breaths.
Oh gosh, that's so powerful, and it speaks to how trauma can embed itself in our senses. The memories aren't just emotional, they become physical, almost visceral.
It's like they're imprinted on your body and mind, and they can resurface in the most unexpected ways, triggered by sight, sounds, even smells.
Exactly, and that's why it's so important to understand that trauma is not a sign of weakness. It's a natural human response to a deeply disturbing event.
Right? Our brains are wired to protect us, and sometimes that means holding on to those traumatic memories as a way to avoid similar situations in the future. But it can also be incredibly debilitating if those memories aren't processed in a healthy way.
Absolutely. And there were so many other types of loss represented in that thread. People who had lost their homes to fires, someone who found their roommate dead from an overdose. These are all incredibly difficult experiences that can leave deep scars.
And it's important to remember that trauma can manifest in many different ways. We often think of PTSD, but there's also complex trauma, which can result from prolonged exposure to adverse experiences. And then there's developmental trauma, which occurs during childhood and can have a lasting impact on emotional and neurological development.
It's like trauma can reshape us, rewiring our brains and impacting how we interact with the world.
Absolutely. And moving from loss and trauma, another theme that stood out was betrayal and broken trust.
Oh, yeah. These were particularly hard to read because they highlight the dark side of human relationships and the pain that can be inflicted when those bonds are violated.
One commenter talked about being cheated on and how it transformed them from a pushover to someone with zero patience for disrespect.
It's like the betrayal forced them to build up stronger boundaries and become more assertive.
Right. And there was some story about a person whose two best friends of 20 years admitted they never actually wanted to be friends with them.
Can you imagine the feeling of having your whole social reality shattered like that? It's devastating.
And then there was the commenter whose ex-girlfriend accused them of cheating and then cheated on them as a way to get even.
That kind of manipulative behavior is so toxic. It's a classic example of gaslighting, making the other person doubt their own sanity.
Yeah, gaslighting can be incredibly damaging. It erodes your sense of self and your perception of reality.
And it's often difficult to recognize, especially when he's coming from someone you trust.
Right. And it's interesting because while we're talking about betrayal on a personal level, there were also a lot of comments that pointed to a broader sense of betrayal, a feeling of being let down by society itself.
That's a really important point. A lot of people expressed a sense of disillusionment with institutions they felt had failed them, the job market, the government, the healthcare system, even the media.
Yeah, one commenter just said society had messed them up.
It's short but powerful. right?
It speaks to a feeling of alienation and disconnect, like you're at odds with the world around you.
And I think a lot of people are feeling that way these days. There's so much uncertainty and change happening. It's easy to feel overwhelmed and powerless.
Absolutely. It's like the weight of the world is pressing down on us.
And in that context, it's no wonder that people are struggling with feelings of anxiety and hopelessness.
So how do we cope with all of this? How do we navigate these complex emotional landscapes and find a way to thrive in a world that often feels overwhelming?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And while there's no easy answer, there are definitely strategies that can help us build resilience and cultivate a sense of well-being even in the face of adversity.
Well, let's dive into those strategies after a quick break. We'll be right back to explore the pathways to resilience and healing.
Sounds good. You know, one thing that really stood out to me as we were reading through these comments was the sense of regret that a lot of people expressed.
Yeah, that's true. It wasn't always explicitly stated, but you could definitely feel this underlying sense of what if or if only in so many of the stories.
Regret can be such a heavy emotion. You know, it often stems from this feeling of missed opportunities or choices we wish we could take back.
Yeah, like there was one commenter who mentioned regretting their early experiences with casual sex.
Mm.
They didn't go into detail, but you could sense this feeling of maybe having compromised their values or something.
It's not necessarily about the act itself, but more about the dissonance it creates within us. You
Yeah.
know, that feeling of not aligning with our own personal growth.
Right, and another commenter talked about regretting not focusing on their education when they were younger.
It's like they realize the missed opportunities, and it's something they still carry with them.
Yeah, and then there's the regret of lost time. Several people mentioned wasting their youth on unhealthy relationships or addictive behaviors.
That realization that time is finite can be a real trigger for regret, especially as we get older.
It's like you look back with the wisdom of experience, but it can also be painful to see the paths not taken.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that we make decisions based on what we know at the time. We can't hold ourselves to some impossible standard of knowing everything in advance.
So how do we manage those feelings of regret? How do we prevent them from overwhelming us?
Well, one approach is to try and reframe regret as a catalyst for growth.
Hmm.
Instead of viewing it as a burden, see it as an opportunity to learn from your past and make better choices going forward.
Turn that negative energy into something positive.
Exactly. And self-compassion is also crucial. You know, be kind to yourself, recognize that everyone makes mistakes. It's part of being human.
We're all works in progress.
Right. And sometimes it's also about learning to let go.
Let go.
Yeah, accepting that you can't change the past and choosing to focus on creating a future that aligns with your values.
It's about shifting your perspective from what was to what can be.
Exactly. And that sense of feeling powerless, like you can't control external forces, that really connects with some of the other comments we saw about societal pressure.
Oh, yeah. There was a lot of anxiety about things like the job market and politics and the state of the world in general.
It's like people are feeling this sense of being trapped in systems that are beyond their control.
Yeah, one commenter talked about the pressure to present this perfect image on social media.
Ah, yes, the curated highlight reel.
Right. And then others mentioned the pressure to achieve financial success, the fear of losing their job, the anxieties of navigating a rapidly changing world.
It's like all of these societal pressures are compounding people's personal struggles.
So how do we deal with these larger forces that seem to be bearing down on us?
Well, it starts with focusing on what you can control. Your mindset, your choices, your actions. You can choose how you respond to stress, how you engage with information, how you take care of yourself.
It's about finding those little pockets of agency.
Exactly. And connection is also huge. When we feel isolated, it's easy to succumb to despair. But when we connect with others who share our concerns, it can be really empowering.
Strength in numbers.
Right. It's a reminder that you're not alone in your struggles.
And sometimes it's also about channeling that anxiety into positive action.
Hmm.
Getting involved in causes you care about, advocating for change, working to create a better world.
Absolutely. Taking action can be a powerful antidote to feeling powerless.
And amidst all of this darkness, all of these stories of pain and loss and societal pressures, there was also this glimmer of hope.
Yes, the resilience of the human spirit.
So many people, despite their hardships, expressed a desire to heal, to grow, to find meaning.
One commenter talked about finding solace in therapy and rebuilding their life after hitting rock bottom.
It's a testament to the power of seeking help when you need it.
Right. And another shared their determination to protect their daughter from experiencing the same trauma they had endured.
Breaking the cycle.
Exactly. And there were others who talked about using their painful experiences to become more cautious, setting healthier boundaries, learning to advocate for themselves.
Turning pain into wisdom.
It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, we have the power to choose how we respond, how we heal, how we move forward.
It's a choice we make every single day.
And that inherent human capacity for resilience is what gives me hope.
Me too. It's a reminder that even when things feel broken, there's always the possibility of healing and growth. Going through this thread, it's amazing how open people were sharing these really personal and often painful experiences.
It's really powerful. It speaks to the idea that even in the anonymity of the internet, people crave connection and understanding. They want to share their stories and know that they're not alone.
And it's not just about sharing the darkness. There were so many stories of healing and growth, too.
Absolutely. People finding ways to cope, to make sense of their experiences, to move forward. It's really inspiring.
There was one commenter who talked about finding solace in art.
Oh, wow.
They said it was a way to channel their pain into something beautiful and meaningful.
That's so powerful. It's a reminder that healing can take many forms and that sometimes the most unexpected things can be therapeutic.
Another commenter talked about the importance of forgiveness,
Hmm.
not just forgiving others, but also forgiving themselves.
That's so crucial. Holding on to resentment and bitterness can really weigh you down. Forgiveness is about letting go of that baggage and creating space for healing.
It's not about condoning hurtful actions, but about freeing yourself from the pain of the past.
Exactly. And there were also people who talked about finding healing through connecting with nature.
Yeah, spending time outdoors can be so grounding and restorative.
There's something about being in nature that reminds us of our own resilience, like we're part of this larger cycle of growth and renewal.
It's like nature offers a mirror to our own capacity for transformation.
I love that. And I think that's what's so incredible about this thread. It's this tapestry of shared experiences woven together with threads of vulnerability, resilience, and hope.
And it's a reminder that even in our darkest moments, we are not alone.
We're all connected in some way, and there's always a path towards healing.
It might not be easy and it might take time, but there's always hope.
Always. And sometimes just knowing that others have been through similar struggles can be incredibly comforting.
It gives us the strength to keep going, to keep searching for meaning and purpose, to keep believing in the possibility of a brighter future.
And that's what I want people to take away from this conversation. You're not alone in your pain, and you're not alone in your journey towards healing.
So thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the human experience. We hope it's given you some food for thought and maybe even a little bit of hope.
And if you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to check out more of Shauna Polidge's content on her YouTube channel. You can find a link in the description below.
And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more insightful discussions about the things that matter most.
Thanks for listening, everyone.